So Jamie, I understood that you have applied PR once on your own before. So would you mind sharing with our viewers today what are the challenges you face as an applicant applying for PR on his own?
Yeah, Elena, I actually applied on my own, and it's actually a very tedious job to do, collecting all the documentation that you need. And my application actually got rejected 6 months in. And I think the toughest or the biggest challenge is we don't really know what the rejection is about. Don't waste time applying on your own. Seek professional advice. And I would highly, highly recommend you to talk to Elena and the team at the Immigration People.
Hey Jamie, congratulations on getting your Singapore PR approved, and thank you so much for taking the time to share with our viewers today on your PR application journey. So Jamie, I've always been intrigued by your background because I understand that you're a South Korean but have lived in, Southeast Asia, Malaysia for most of your life. So what actually prompted you to relocate to Singapore in the very first place? Were you transferred by your company to Singapore, or how did it all begin?
Thanks, Elena. First of all, I just want to say thank you for helping me get my PR. I'm really, really excited about it.
You're most welcome.
Thank you. So I just want to give you a bit of background in terms of who I am. So I'm a very unique case. Yes, I'm a South Korean, but I grew up in Malaysia. So I moved to Malaysia when I was only 10 months old.
Wow.
And have lived there for over 20 years. Throughout my journey, the culture and everything was all about Southeast Asia. And I went back to Korea just for my national service and also to do a little bit of, to work in Korea for a bit. And my heart is always in Southeast Asia, and there were a lot of opportunities in Singapore for expats, and that's why I decided to come back to Southeast Asia to begin my journey.
Very interesting, Jamie. So how long have you been living in Singapore, and what do you love about this country?
I've been living in Singapore since 2015, and wow, what do I love about Singapore? I really don't know where to start. If I can highlight, I would love to highlight 3 things. Number 1 is the cleanliness, and number 2 is basically the safety of the country, as well as the third one is what expats like myself can get and what the government actually provides to expats as well.
So what makes you want to become PR actually? 2 years is actually pretty soon for you to come to that decision, right?
Yeah, that was actually the time when I met my wife. And we always had the dream of starting a family, and we just realized that Singapore is the perfect country to start a family with. So that was when I decided to apply.
So Jamie, I understood that you have applied PR once on your own before. So would you mind sharing with our viewers today what are the challenges you face as an applicant applying for PR on his own?
Yeah, Elena, I actually applied on my own, and it's actually a very tedious job to do, collecting all the documentation that you need. And my application actually got rejected 6 months in. And I think the toughest or the biggest challenge is we don't really know what the rejection is about.
Yes, so unfortunately, Singapore's immigration policies may not be that transparent. So this leaves actually a lot of applicants, not knowing what to do next, or what is the right angle to approach for their applications. And Jamie, actually, how do you feel about working with the immigration people?
Yeah, working with the immigration people has been really professional and efficient, starting from the consultation. Thanks to you, Elena, for that. All the way to documentation as well as the follow-up. One of the biggest thing I found very interesting is basically the documentation part, where your team actually provided a lot of extra information as well as providing me a cover letter, which really enhanced my portfolio. I think that's something that I really, really appreciate.
Thank you so much. I know it's also our pleasure working with such a cooperative client like you. Yes, in providing us all the documents timely and also following our instructions and advice. So I think the entire journey with working with you has been a breeze.
Thank you.
And Jamie, so now that you're a PR, what are your plans for the future here in Singapore? What do you plan to do next? Perhaps you'd like to share a little bit with our viewers as well. What can a PR do?
Yeah, of course. I think the biggest thing for me and my wife is raising a family. So we're definitely calling Singapore our home and starting a family over here. And what can PRs get, or what are the benefits that we have living as a PR in Singapore is basically I think the biggest thing is obviously the financial loan, and also we're able to purchase private as well as HDB properties down along the line. I think this is something that we are always looking forward to. One of the biggest thing that my wife has always told me about is the education level in Singapore, which is academically, which is really, really good, considering that she's also a cellist as well as a piano teacher. So she knows a lot of schools, and she knows the education is really, really good. So these are some of the different factors that we see Singapore being our home. And also as a PR, I think this will actually help us and benefit us a lot.
Awesome. I do hope you really have a good stay here in Singapore as PR and being able to raise your family.
Thanks, Elena.
So Jimmy, I also understand that you're actually a tech professional. So perhaps you would like to share what is your outlook on the tech industry here in Singapore, considering our government is always trying to put us in the spot of Singapore being a smart city or smart nation.
Yeah, of course. I've been in the tech industry for about 5 to 7 years now. Breathe and live tech all this time. I think Singapore, there are two things actually what I see about the tech world or the tech industry in Singapore. The first one is how the global companies or how global startups see Singapore as the main HQ and as a hub for their company to start with. I think this really benefits a lot in terms of startups trying to expand their business and expand to APAC. They always call Singapore as their home.
Okay.
Secondly is how everything is moving through the digital side of things. Let's take for example the pandemic. The Singapore government has rolled out a couple of initiatives. Let's take for example the issuing of virtual banking licenses. So that's something that we have seen them start in terms of creating more remote businesses.
Thank you, Jamie. I think it's awesome that Singapore has attracted talents like you and your wife for you to actually continue driving our tech industry, and for your wife to nurture the arts and culture sphere in Singapore. Thank you, Jamie, for taking the time to share with our viewers on your experience, with the immigration people, as well as your journey to becoming a Singapore PR. I do hope that you and your family continue to enjoy your stay here in Singapore. And of course, in the future, if you decide to take up citizenship, you know who to look for.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you for.
Thank you so much, and we hope to see you guys in the next episode of Successful PR Stories.